Good morning. If we haven't met, my name is Charlie, and just so you know, my mom would be proud right now. My mom is infamous for having usually like 3 or 4 drinks in her car. She has her coffee and her water, usually a soda, and I feel like as she watches this later, she's going to be very proud of me. I got my multiple beverages up here. We're ready to go. So that's for you, Mom. So if you're here with us last week, I promised to come up in the leotard from All the Single Ladies with Beyonce. I did not follow through, and I apologize. I did not appreciate those groans of relief, but that's fine. No, I just want to give you another update. We got some pictures of the Sherwood family. They are down in, there they go, look at them. They are down in Chattanooga, I believe, visiting their son, Jaron, who lives out that way. And I'm really hoping that that is not armed. That's terrifying. Randy should not be in charge of firearms, but there he is. So just continue to pray for them. We're really excited. It's only about a week in. It feels like it's been a long time without them. And this is just a testament to the love that they have for us, everything that they do for us every week and throughout the week, loving us. So let's keep praying for them that they come back more and more rested and with all their limbs, having not lost any to any cannons, okay? No, last week, if you were with us, we got to talk about the things not to say to single people. And if, like me, when I was reading over that list, when I got the notes, I was like, people don't say that. The more single people I've talked to, people say that. I actually talked to a good friend of mine, and she said, actually, the number one thing that people say to her was the number one thing on our list. You're so great. Why are you still single? She said, oh, I used to get that all the time. So today we're going to be talking about what to do as we're possibly waiting, right? If we feel like we do want to be married, what do we do in that waiting period? And what it can kind of be like is it can kind of be like when you're waiting on a delivery or a repairman, right? Because usually when you call the schedule, they're like, okay, we're going to be in there between 9 and 9, 3 Wednesdays from now. And I don't know who that still works for, right? In our family, we both work, my wife and I, and I'm like, who are the people that still are like, perfect, we'll be there whenever you arrive. So instead, you have to like schedule to accommodate this, right? One of you stays home from work. But when you're at home, you kind of feel stuck, right? Every time you hear a noise, and in our house, for some reason, I don't know if it's the insulation in our home, but if someone coughs 2 doors over, we hear it, right? Anytime someone starts their car, we're like, ah. But every time we hear someone approach the door, we wonder, oh, is that them? Is that them? And we don't want to start something, right? We don't want to start a big project because then we're going to have to interrupt that project. And we're limited in the things we can't do, right? If we're waiting on our water to get fixed, well, now we can't do dishes, can't do laundry. If something's wrong with the refrigerator, you don't want to forget and accidentally open the refrigerator because you're trying to keep everything preserved by keeping it closed. And you can't stop wondering why they haven't arrived and why in the world it's taking so long. And then they cancel on you, and you have a total meltdown because you haven't done anything all day. And now they're coming 3 more Wednesdays from now, in between 5 a.m. and 7 a.m., right? Well, this is kind of what it's like when you're single, right? You're waiting. You feel stuck in this season of life that you're pretty ready to move past. You don't want to be single anymore. You're constantly wondering when you're going to meet that person or when your life will start. Should I start this business or this master's program, or should I wait? Because will that get in the way of me meeting somebody? You feel like you should be productive, but you can't stop daydreaming and worrying about the future. Every time you meet someone that you find even partly interesting, there's this part of you wondering, is this it? Is this person the one? And then when you realize they're not the one, you just cash in all your sick days and you fall apart. And then you read something in the scriptures like we read last week. And when I read this, as I was preparing for this message, I've told multiple people, it's so funny in the church, we have this idea that the end goal is that you be a married, well-adjusted adult. And then you read the Bible, and instead it says this in 1 Corinthians 7. I want you to be free from the concerns of this life. An unmarried man can spend his time doing the Lord's work and thinking how to please him. But a married man has to think about his earthly responsibilities and how to please his wife. His interests are divided. Some women are like, I wish my husband would think more about ways to please me. He's completely undivided, but... Wait, are we still doing that marriage class? Has that already started? Never mind, you're hosed. Okay. In the same way, a woman who is no longer married or has never been married can be devoted to the Lord and holy in body and in spirit. But a married woman has to think about her earthly responsibilities and how to please her husband. I am saying this for your benefit, not to place restrictions on you. I want you to do whatever will help you serve the Lord best with as few distractions as possible. And I love that part where he says, I'm doing this for your benefit, not to place restrictions on you. You see, Paul is convinced that singleness is a gift from God because romantic relationships require so much of us. And being single means you can invest all your energy and all your attention into serving God and making the world a better place. After I preached this last week, I was talking to a coworker of mine, and she's an amazing Christian woman. She's one of the lead nurses at our company, and she's been single for a while. She's a little bit younger than me, but has really, really wanted to be in a relationship. And she's actually now in a serious relationship that seems to be really heading towards marriage. And she mentioned how she and her boyfriend are actually beginning to plan how their lives are going to change as they go deeper in their relationship and eventually get married. You see, both of them have been able to give themselves completely to their work, but also to the church. In fact, her boyfriend is having to train his replacement for his volunteer position because he's almost like a staff member at their church. Now, first of all, I want you to know that this shows their maturity, right? How often do we think when we take on something new that we can just keep going in the way that we've been going? We've realized this. In October, my wife started working at our son's church part-time, and we just kind of assumed life would keep going with her working more, and it has not. We've had to shift some things around. We've had to figure stuff out. But how amazing is it that this couple is already ahead of that curve? Later on, we're going to talk about how in this place of singleness, we should be worrying about maturity. And not to bury the lead, but for you married people, you should still be a little bit worried about your maturity. Right? But these people are on top of it. So it just shows that they've been doing that work. But second, it also highlights Paul's point. They've been able to be an incredible blessing to their churches as single people. And now as they are preparing for married life, they're actually having to grieve some of the loss that they have now of not being able to invest as much. But let's be real. Channeling your relational angst into your community isn't really our first impulse, right? Instead of saying, hey, I'm single, it's not where I want to be, I'm going to invest in other people, what we do instead is we pine for what we wish we had. And we just try to make ourselves feel better and numb that feeling of what we're missing out on. You see, a lot of anxiety in general comes from the fact that we're living in the future, right? We have an idea of where we want to go, and we just want to skip the middle part. We just want to get there to the thing that we want. But because there's little or nothing that we can do about that, we sit around anxiously obsessing over an outcome that we can't control. And that often spirals into depression and addiction. That's why Jesus says, I believe in Matthew 6:34, don't worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will bring its own worries. Today's trouble is enough for today. Have you ever read that passage and be like, Jesus, that just does not seem realistic? Because on one hand, if you just never worry about tomorrow and live completely in the moment, your life's quickly going to be a mess, right? I don't know when I'm getting paid. I just show up and I hope there's money, right? But I think if we took the spirit of this on and if we really lived in such a way that we were mindful of the troubles tomorrow, but we didn't live in them yet. Instead, we lived in today. We realize that there's enough troubles, there's enough stuff that I can worry about, that I can change right now. I don't need to also worry about the things that I can't change. They say the hard thing about anxiety is that you experience the worst things in life twice, right? Because you've been worrying about them forever. And then they happen and you have confirmation bias. You're like, see, I knew this was going to happen. But all your anxiety and worrying didn't prepare you any better. I was joking before service with an unnamed person so I don't get him in trouble with his wife. But my wife, I'm just going to get in trouble with my wife. My wife is a worrier, but not a planner. So she has no idea where we are, but she's sure that we're not supposed to be there, right? I'm a planner and not a worrier. So I'm the one who manages the finances in our home. My wife has no idea what's going on with us financially, but she's sure we're in a lot of trouble, right? And that's the hard thing about anxiety, is often when we're living in the future, the truth doesn't even help us because we're just so caught up in that anxiety. But if we could really live this way, it would be amazing. But instead, when we're without something, it feels like the only thing that shows up in our social feed is everyone who has that thing and how happy they are, right? When you're single, one of the worst times of year is wedding season, right? You see all those people, even that weird chick from college is getting married, and you're still here single, and you're like, what is going on? Right? We're over here discontent and wanting this thing, and they're rubbing it in our face. And maybe that's not their intention, but it sure feels like it. And then it starts that spiral all over again. Why isn't it happening? When is it going to happen? Is there something wrong with me? Should I give up altogether and just become a nun? You don't want to worry, but you feel like you can't help it. But here's something that we should know, and this is how our brain works. You can't stop obsessing over something by telling yourself not to. Right? It's like right now, if I told you, don't think about Abraham Lincoln, what are you thinking about? Abraham Lincoln. And throughout my message, you're going to think about Abraham Lincoln. He's just going to come to your mind. Instead, we have to give ourselves something else to focus on, to pursue, and to invest in. So this means agreeing with yourself. I'm not going to demonize this desire. To want something out of life is not a sin. I'm going to let that desire exist. I'm going to know that it's there. I'm going to acknowledge it. And I'm going to channel my energy and my efforts into things that will better me and my community in the meantime. And what starts to happen is that healthy focus actually pulls you away from that unhealthy obsession. This is how recovery works. If you've ever known anybody who's into the 12 steps, right? What often happens is when you have some sort of addiction, you tell the people in your life, I'm just going to read a book and it's going to get better. And then you read that book and you're still addicted. What's amazing about the 12 steps is by going through the 12 steps, people completely change huge aspects of our lives. And they become obsessed with working the steps. They become obsessed with recovery, and that obsession actually pulls them away. And that's part of addiction recovery. The other part of it is community, which we're going to talk more and more about. I am convinced that Jesus has us heal in community. We are harmed in relationship, and we are healed in relationship. And that's why often addiction stays, because addiction teaches us that we need to be alone to deal with our addiction. No one else can see. And it's in that darkness that it thrives. So as we're struggling with these things, we need to be focusing on something else. But what should we focus on? Well, I'm really glad you asked. So we're going to look in Galatians 6, and actually it says the New Living Translation, but I lied on the, this is actually the Message translation. I really like the way the Message captures this passage. It says this, make a careful exploration of who you are and the work you have been given, and then sink yourself into that. Don't be impressed with yourself. Don't compare yourself with others. Each of you must take responsibility for doing the creative best you can with your own life. He's saying, stop telling yourself you're behind because you're looking around and comparing yourself to everyone else. You're not them. You're living your own story. In life, one of the best rules you can follow is the same rule you heard in second grade. Keep your eyes on your own paper. You see, God's only expectation of you is to rest in his love for you and to do your creative best with whatever's in front of you. I want to sit on this because I think the first part is so important. God's only expectation of you is to rest in his love for you. I want to focus here because I think sometimes Christianity can become sort of a vehicle for self-improvement. You come to church and you feel like it's kind of just like the TED Talk you heard, just with a little Jesus sprinkled in. The hope of Jesus is not just that you would become the best version of yourself. And hopefully as we follow Jesus, yes, we become more like him. But the big part and the big mission of Jesus is that you would be able to rest in his love. That you would know that you are dearly loved, and out of that place, desire to become more like him. You see, that person that you're comparing yourself to didn't have the same upbringing as you. They didn't have the same opportunities as you. They don't have the same brain chemistry that you do, or the same body type that you do. They don't have the same emotional trauma that you had to live with. And I could go on and on and on, but the point is that they're a completely different person, living a completely different life, and most of which you know nothing about. Often, and we say this about Instagram all the time, right? You're comparing your regular life to their highlight reel. You don't know what they're really living. Cut the comparison. Teddy Roosevelt says this. He says, comparison is the thief of joy. No wonder we're depressed, right? We're living online just watching all these people live these amazing fake lives. And what I love about that passage that we were in Galatians, I love the phrase, your creative best, because creativity is not about copying, right? It's not about building something from nothing. It's taking the raw materials that you have access to right now and making something meaningful out of it. And that means your creative best in this season will look different than everyone else's creative best. So don't just sit around daydreaming. Especially if you're single in this period of life, don't just sit around daydreaming. And don't just get busy doing something that someone else says that you should do, or following what our culture says that you should do. Do your creative best. Be proactive in the way that works for you. See, the book of Ecclesiastes is kind of a downer. Has anyone read the book of Ecclesiastes? Usually that's the part of the Bible where we're just like, I'm going to skip to the New Testament, right? Ecclesiastes was traditionally said to have been written by Solomon, and its most famous passage is the one that says, meaningless, meaningless, meaningless. Everything is meaningless. But actually the point of that book is that everything is meaningless except for God and the things that are eternal. But he says something really interesting in the middle of Ecclesiastes. He says this, so go ahead, eat your food with joy and drink your wine with a happy heart, for God approves of this. Wear fine clothes with a splash of cologne. This is another one you're like, this is in the Bible? He's saying life is short. Go ahead, have a few drinks, order some appetizers, get a new outfit, put yourselves out there, throw on some cologne, but just a splash, okay? That's biblical. For some of you that I can smell coming down the hallway, biblically, you are out of line. Just a splash of cologne, okay? You think sometimes we get this picture of Christian life that it's meant to be boring, right? We're meant to live like a monk, trapped in a room with no decorations, just praying quietly all day. But that's not the life that Jesus laid out. That's not the life that we're meant to lead. That's not the way God created the world. God made this world as a playground. Have you ever been to the mountains? Have you ever seen the ocean? This is a axe that I have to grind. I think one of the biggest things that points to the existence of God is coffee. And those who know me know I'm a weirdo when it comes to coffee, okay? But think about this. God created a plant that grows in Africa that makes these cherries that has a little pit in the middle of it that when you dry out, roast, grind up and run water through, makes the most amazing beverage known to man, right? It has more flavor compounds possible than wine, right? This incredibly complex fruit. What in the world, man? What if we would have never discovered it? I think God guided us to coffee. So anyway, I'll get off of my soapbox. But even the topic of this series, and I'll be delicate for little ears, but is something that God made for our enjoyment and our pleasure and our fun. God made us to enjoy this world. But later in the same verse, he goes on to say this too. Whatever you do, do well. For when you go to the grave, there will be no work or planning or knowledge or wisdom. You see, God made us for fun. He created the Sabbath so we could take a day just to enjoy the world that he created. But he also made us for work, for meaningful work, for goals, to make a meaning out of the world around us, to build a life, and yes, to improve ourselves in the world around us, because we don't have forever. So the way I would summarize this is work to become the best version of yourself while enjoying the life that you have right now. You see, the hard thing is a lot of us have a trouble striking the balance with this. We either live in the future, right, working hard, grinding, throwing ourselves into work, in order to somehow create a life for our family, sometimes missing the family that we're working for in the meantime. Or, and some of us have some siblings or some cousins or some brothers and sisters that are like this, we live entirely in the moment, right? We don't ever build anything. We're having a really good time, but at the end of the day, we've got nothing to show for it. And the hard thing is neither of those creates a full life. So the question is, how do we figure out what the creative best is for our life right now? What specific things should we be focused on? And we're going to have 6 suggestions. And I will tell you, these 6 suggestions are really for those of us who are single, those of us who are wanting to be married, but I think they have a lot for us married folks as well, and a lot for even those people that are single and maybe think maybe marriage isn't on the horizon. So we're going to go through them. The first one is to become more self-aware. See, everybody has this friend, right, where they go, I don't know why things never work out for me. And inwardly you're going, oh, I know. I know why they don't work out for you. Because there's this big blind spot that they're not aware of. And not addressing it is just kind of continuing this form of self-sabotage in their life, right? They're like, I don't know why I can't make any friends. Cannot figure out the through line. And it's like, buddy, you're the through line. Wherever you are, there you are, right? For some, it's an issue of overconfidence. For some, it's a lack of confidence. Or, to be honest, a lot of times it's lack of confidence masquerading as overconfidence, right? Some are just so self-absorbed. Every time they go on a date, that person's like, man, I would really like to talk about me maybe one time throughout this night. Or they have such a low opinion of themselves that they can't even seek out somebody who really loves them. So this is what I would recommend. Take personality tests. There are amazing tools out there like the Enneagram, attachment style, analyzing your conflict style, knowing your spiritual gifts. Get to know yourself and ask yourselves, what do I need to become the healthiest, most productive version of me right now? We're a little bit self-absorbed as a culture. I don't know if you knew this. We are the culture that invented the selfie, right? But we also have amazing tools nowadays to get to know yourself, to really understand. So do those things. Jump in. The next one is like it. Process your trauma. And someone just rolled their eyes, and I heard it. I heard that, okay? But here's the deal. Relational desperation, so this desire to be in a relationship is often the result of pain and abandonment from earlier in life. We don't want to talk about it, but daddy issues are real. And they don't just affect women. You can't gloss over your deep childhood wounds with a romantic relationship. You bring it with you. And I think sometimes we in the church, so we say these things, right? Like, my sins are covered by the blood of the Lamb. And that is so true. Everything you've done, every bad thing you've said, everything you've done is forgiven. That doesn't mean you can escape the consequences. And when we ignore those, we bring them into the relationships that we have right now. You need to make peace with the relationship you had with your parents and how it was different from the one that you wanted. And you need to become aware of how your previous dynamics are going to affect your current relational dynamics. You see, we bring our whole selves into relationships. So if you've been betrayed, hurt, or abandoned, then often your walls go up real quick. Or maybe you think so little of yourself that you don't have any boundaries at all. You know what often happens? Then you're going to seek out a person who's going to walk all over you just like your mom did. And you just repeat the cycle. You see, many of us project those past hurts onto our present relationships. We punish the ones we're with now for the sins of those who came before. If you don't pursue healing, then you're going backwards. I'm sorry to say this. This is a real downer in the sermon, but there is no Switzerland in this. We're either seeking healing or we're just going to remain in our dysfunction. So spend time processing with God. Cement yourself in a small group. Go to therapy. I can't say this enough. Therapy is amazing. Go talk to somebody. See a psychiatrist. Go to recovery meetings if you have an addiction. Do all the things. Because for single people who want to be married, this is preparing you for marriage. And the hope is that when you come into marriage, you'll come in with a maturity that's going to help you succeed. I wish I had done a lot more of this before I got married. For those of you who are single who think, I want to be married, but I just don't know if it's going to happen. You know what the awesome thing is that God wants you to be more self-aware, and he wants you to deal with your trauma because it makes you a better friend and a better person. It'll bring more peace to your life, even if you're not married. And for those of you who are already married, the truth of the matter is some of us, not me, of course, but some of us brought some lack of self-awareness and some trauma into our marriages. Often the patterns that we learn from our trauma are at the center of our recurring fights in our relationship. And if you've been married for a while, you know. We could list the 3 or 4 fights, right? This is fight number 1. We're just going to do the same dance. And I will tell you, my destructive patterns and my issues absolutely could have torpedoed our marriage if it weren't for the help of good therapy and groups and people in my life. So this is not just for the single people. The next one we need to do is establish a healthy inner circle. You see, most people's trajectory is an average of the 5 people they spend the most time with. So I want you to think about those top 5 people you spend the most time with and ask yourself, are they a good influence or a bad influence? You see, if your inner circle is your 3 out-of-shape buddies who play video games all day and gripe about women, guess what you're becoming? And guess who's not on some woman's vision board on Pinterest, right? That guy. That's the one I want. Nobody wants that. So ask yourself, who do I want to be? And who do I know who's great at that? How do I get more time with them to learn from them? If a healthy person were to come up to you and want to be married, would you be able to say, these are the people I go to when I need advice? The 4th one is design healthy habits. You see, habits are pre-made decisions. They're routines that establish easier ways for us to do what we should do. So if you're wanting somebody to join you in creating a life together, and they look at the way you run your life and they're like, no thanks, maybe you should change the way that you live your life. Build habits around your body, mind, soul, and spirit. Are you taking care of all 4 of those? And if so, how? As a dad now, I freak out about the guy that my little girl will choose to marry if she decides to get married, right? And what's funny is my wife freaks out about the girl our son might pick. And it's so hard not to be so critical sometimes when we see those people we love and they start to date somebody and you're going, I don't know. Right? What's their devotional life look like? Do they go to church? Are they taking care of themselves? Are they part of a community? Are they being influenced to grow and become a better person? Do they know how to sacrifice? So for those of us who want to be married, this is huge. We become what we repeatedly do. Have you noticed that? The things that you repeatedly do, they affect who you are, and so do the people you spend time with. So create healthy habits and surround yourself with healthy people so that you can be someone who's good for that person when you actually find them. For those who don't think marriage is on the table for you, then for you even more so, the trajectory of your life is still defined by the healthiness of your habits. You may not want to be married, and that might not be part of your journey, but you were made for community. You were made to be a blessing, and you were made to make sure that you have a community that's good for you too. And for us married folks, there's a tendency, right? We all have that friend and who, once they start dating, you just never see them again, right? We have a tendency in marriage to kind of disappear into the cloister of marriage. But we were also made for community, right? We weren't meant to just hunker down with our family in some sort of faraway ranch and live off the grid, right? We're meant to be influencing and befriending people and helping them know Jesus and becoming more like Jesus ourselves. I'm going to go through these last 2 fairly quickly. First one is get a steady job, get out of debt, and save. Again, if you're single, this is an amazing opportunity to do this that makes a lot of sense. I will tell you, most of the time nowadays, there are 2-income households. So I'd ask yourself, if you want to be married, what are you bringing to the table? And if you're like, baby, I got 6 figures of school debt, 5 figures of credit card debt, but I do work at Cold Stone and I can get you some free ice cream, okay? Now, some people here are like, I mean, free ice cream. That's not bad, But we really want to ask ourselves, what are we working towards? So if you don't have a job, get a job. If you have a job, but it's not a great job, try to get a better job. Try to build a career. And the last one is similar, build something. The truth of the matter is that the fewer obligations you have, the more freedom you have about where to direct your time and energy. Don't just get by. Grow something. Build something. Your education, your career, your talents, your friendships, your passions, your hobbies. You don't need to have a job that fulfills every single want and desire, but you can have places that you volunteer. You can have a hobby, something that really makes you want to get up in the morning, that blesses the world. Use your free time to make something that matters. And here's the deal. This is the really hard thing for some of us who are single. There is no guarantee that you're going to meet somebody. So if you're just waiting to do something until you meet that person, you could get to the end of your life and realize that you wasted it waiting. The truth is you have no control over who you might meet, but you do have some control over who you become. So make it count. For us married people, there's a huge thing that we get to build together, which is a family. And it's a wonderful thing to build a family. But the cool thing about having a family, like I said, is not just that our family would become this insulated community. The first vision that God has when he spoke to Abraham is that his family would be a blessing to the world. And God wants the same for your family, for this church family, but also your nuclear family, for you to be a blessing to the world. I do want to add a note here too. I got to talk to that friend of mine who's a nurse at our company. And she said that there was a season in life where she was really, really working on herself. But then she really heard from the Lord that she was really trying to earn that person. And I think sometimes we can get into that with God. And that's why I want to draw that line between self-improvement and Jesus. Jesus is not just a vehicle for you to use to become the best version of yourself. Because God loves you just the way you are. He made you intentionally. He made you perfectly. He's inviting you into a journey to become more like him, to become a blessing to those people around you, to grow. He wants you to become more like him, not through effort and not through earning, not trying to earn a spouse, but out of a place of deep, deep love and acceptance. So just know that you are loved and accepted right where you are. But he is inviting you on a journey to find your creative best to build a meaningful life. So for this week, I would ask you to ask God what area of your life he wants you to put more creative energy into. In this next season, whether you're single or married, what does your creative best look in trying to become more like Jesus? Let's pray.